I was 68 years old, standing in the doorway of a church in Philadelphia, when my only son looked at me as if I were the enemy. His tuxedo fit him like success. His bride gleamed in lace, and I, Frances Morgan, the widow who had raised him alone, was the one they wished would vanish. 2 hours earlier, I had stopped a $200,000 check, money drained from decades of washing other people's clothes, money meant to buy their fairy tale wedding. My palms had still been trembling on the leather steering wheel outside the bank, but my voice was steady when I told the teller, "Cancel it, effective immediately." Now here I was, face to face with Samuel, the baby I once rocked through the night, the boy whose braces and textbooks I'd worked double shifts to afford. He stepped forward, fury etched in every line of his jaw. "How dare you embarrass me like this?" Embarrass him? After 42 years of sacrifice, after giving up nursing school, after building a laundromat with my raw, cracked hands so he could go to college, my very presence was humiliation. Natalie appeared then, veil quivering, bouquet shaking in her manicured grip. Her words cut sharper than any blade. "This is what poor people do. They ruin everything because they're jealous. Poor, jealous." Words hurled at the woman who had financed every ice sculpture, every string quartet, every cade plate. The guests shifted, whispers rising like wind through dry grass. Phones lifted, recording, preserving my shame. Samuel's face hardened. "You think I don't know you're sitting on dad's insurance? It's family money, I'm entitled to it." For a heartbeat, I saw not a groom, but a child stamping his foot. My heart split, yet something inside me also locked into place. "You were never going to pay me back," I said softly. His silence was admission enough. They wanted me hidden at table 12. They wanted my money but not my presence. And now they wanted me gone altogether. Natalie's voice hissed through the heavy air. A real mother would support her son unconditionally. I lifted my chin, every eye on me, every recording device capturing the moment. A real son wouldn't be ashamed of his mother. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Guests craned their necks, torn between loyalty and spectacle. The sun poured harsh light over silk gowns and polished shoes, but the only thing I saw was the truth finally unmasked. If you've ever wondered what it costs to love without boundaries, keep watching. My story is not only about betrayal, it is about reclaiming dignity when everyone expects silence. And before you judge me, ask yourself, what would you have done? Join me until the end. Share where you're watching from. And if stories of strength and survival resonate with you, subscribe to Roots and Secrets. Because sometimes the most powerful word a mother can say isn't she waited a lifetime to speak. No. The moment I turned from that church door, voices still echoing in my ears, a lifetime of memories pressed down on me. Betrayal doesn't come in one sudden strike. It arrives in cuts so small you barely notice until you're bleeding out. For me, the cuts began long before the wedding. 2 nights earlier, I stood in my bedroom holding up the navy dress I bought for the ceremony. Not too flashy, not cheap. Just right, I thought. I wanted Natalie's family to see me as respectable, the woman who had raised Samuel with dignity. That dress cost more than I usually spend in a year. I smoothed the fabric and told myself it was worth it. My only son's wedding deserved the best. Then my phone buzzed. "Mom, we need to talk about tomorrow." The text sat on the screen like a warning siren. I called him right away, my heart already tightening. The video connected, and there they were, Samuel and Natalie, in that pristine, white living room, the kind of place I never felt comfortable sitting in. Samuel's shoulders stiff, Natalie's hand heavy on his knee, her ring flashing. "Mom," he began, swallowing hard. "What is it, honey?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Mothers always know. Natalie leaned forward with that smile of hers, practiced and cold. "Mrs. Morgan, you understand that many important people will be attending. Business associates of my father, society people. We were thinking maybe you shouldn't mention the laundromat. And definitely not the fact you're paying for things. It could make people uncomfortable." My laundromat. the business I built after George died, the one that fed and clothed Samuel, the one that put him through college, a lifetime of cracked hands and missed holidays, and now it was something to hide. Samuel wouldn't even look at me. "We've arranged for you to sit at table 12. It's a nice spot." A nice spot by the kitchen doors, in the corner where servers slipped in and out. I'd seen the seating chart. The front tables were for Natalie's family, the important ones. "Actually," Samuel added, voice lowering, "maybe it's better if you just come to the ceremony. The reception might be overwhelming for you." Overwhelming. As though the woman who had worked 16-hour days to keep him fed and sheltered couldn't handle a party. I nodded, my voice steady while my chest cracked open inside. "I see. You understand, right, Mom? It's just one day." "Just one day," he said, as if the 15,000 days before it meant nothing. After the call ended, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at that navy dress, until my vision blurred. How many warnings had I brushed aside? How many times had I told myself Samuel was just busy, just trying to fit in with Natalie's world? There were so many little slides. The dinner when he told me not to mention the laundromat. "Just say you're in the service industry, Mom. Keep it vague." The dress shopping trip I wasn't invited to, though her mother and sisters went. The phone calls cut short with, "Sorry, crazy busy with planning." Each memory was a small cut. Together, they were a slow bleed. And yet, I kept giving. That's what mothers do, isn't it? We give until there's nothing left. I thought back further still, to 1981. I was 26, 8 months pregnant, and morning sickness still clung to me like chains. Nursing school was slipping away, and George promised we'd make it work on his plumber's salary. But pipes freeze in winter, and money dries up. I started small, mending clothes, doing laundry for neighbors. Before long, Morgan's Laundry Services became my life's work. My hands cracked from bleach. My back ached from bending over machines, but it kept Samuel clothed, fed, educated. "Mommy, why do your hands hurt?" he once asked, running tiny fingers over my raw skin. "Because I'm building something special for us," I told him, and I meant it. Years passed. Nursing school called twice, offering re-enrollment. Both times I said no. Samuel needed braces, football gear, tuition. Every penny went to him. And when George died suddenly, Samuel was 22, barely grown. At the funeral, he clung to me, sobbing, "You're all I have left, Mom." "And you're all I have," I whispered back. Those words became a vow I lived by. Every choice, every sacrifice, every dream deferred, I told myself it was for him. And then Natalie arrived. I met her at a Starbucks. Not my home, not my laundromat. A place where her designer heels wouldn't look out of place. She shook my hand like she was granting a favor. "So nice to meet you." Her eyes scanned the strip mall behind me with disdain. When I mentioned the laundromat, she paused before the word like it was foreign. Samuel jumped in quickly, defensive. "Her business is successful. Contracts with local hotels." He said it like an apology. That was when the ground beneath me began to shift. The engagement party came next. Natalie's parents hosted it at their country club. I offered to bring potato salad, the dish everyone loved. Samuel smiled nervously. "Actually, Mom, it's catered. Professional." But when the bill came, they asked me to contribute. $15,000. I said yes, because what's money compared to my son's happiness? That night, Natalie introduced me to guests as Samuel's mother. No name, no identity, just a role. Halfway through, Samuel pulled me aside. "Mom, maybe don't mention you helped pay. It might make her parents feel weird." My money was fine to spend, but not fine to acknowledge. From there, the request grew. $50,000 for the venue, $25,000 for the dress, $30,000 for catering, $5,000 for a planner, $20,000 for flowers. Each time, Samuel's smile tightened. Each time, he promised repayment. Each time, I pulled another piece of George's insurance and my retirement savings away. Until nearly $200,000 were gone. And still, it wasn't enough. One evening, when I tried to talk to him, he looked around my modest house, his eyes calculating. Dad's insurance was more than this. That was the moment I realized my son had stopped seeing me as his mother. To him, I was an account balance. But I still wrote the check. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, pictures of Samuel covering the walls. His first day of school, his graduation, every milestone. I traced his smile with my eyes, asking myself, when did I become someone to hide? I wanted to believe the wedding would change everything, that once the ceremony was over, we'd laugh again, find each other again. But the truth was already written. The pattern was too clear. And when Olivia, sweet 16-year-old Olivia, came to my house 3 days before the wedding and whispered, they said once it's done, they won't need to deal with you anymore. The knife twisted deeper. Her hug was fierce, protective. You deserve better, Aunt Francis. Why do you let them treat you this way? Why, indeed? That night, as the sun set and shadows stretched across my walls, I stared at my checkbook and my phone. My whole life, I had believed love meant giving everything. But sitting there, suffocating under years of slights, I began to wonder, what if real love meant finally saying no? What if no wasn't betrayal? What if it was survival? The thought clung to me like a stubborn thread, weaving through every quiet moment in the days before the wedding. For the first time in decades, I asked myself, what if my silence, my endless giving, was the real mistake? That morning at my kitchen table, the picture of 5-year-old Samuel grinned up at me from its frame. Gaps where his teeth should have been, eyes bright with a trust I had once been sure would never fade. Next to it lay my checkbook, the ink still fresh on a $200,000 check. Next to that, my laptop with bank statements stuck in black and white. Numbers don't lie. Nearly $300,000 siphoned away by requests, promises, manipulations dressed up as tradition and expectations. Olivia's words echoed. They said once they're married, they won't need to deal with you anymore. My heart broke and hardened at once. I saw suddenly what I had been too afraid to admit. Samuel was no longer my boy. He was a man shaped by entitlement, by the cold hand of another family's values, and I had allowed it. Every time I swallowed an insult, every time I opened my wallet, I helped build the wall between us. At 5:30 a.m., I dialed the bank's 24-hour line. My voice was steady. I need to stop payment on a check. Number 4521, $200,000. The representative hesitated. That's a significant amount. May I ask the reason? The services the check was meant to pay for will no longer be needed, I said flatly. 15 minutes later, it was done. For the first time in years, I felt the spine I thought I had lost return to me. But instinct told me to do more than just cancel. Saying no is one thing. Protecting that no is another. I called Patricia Winters, my lawyer and old friend. She had managed George's estate and had always spoken to me with honesty, not pity. When she answered groggily, I didn't apologize for waking her. Pat, I need to set up an education trust fund today. Irrevocable. Francis, it's 6 in the morning. I know. But I need it done before 10. Something in my voice must have told her I was serious. Meet me at the office in an hour. By 7 o'clock, I was sitting across from her mahogany desk. I signed papers with hands that no longer trembled. The money I had once earmarked for Samuel's wedding flowed instead into Olivia's future. College, medical school, a life she had earned through kindness, honesty, and respect. When I left Patricia's office, the city seemed different. Sunlight caught the edges of buildings, and for the first time in decades, the world didn't feel like it was pressing me down. But the phone rang. Samuel's name flashed on the screen. I let it buzz once, twice, 3 times. At 7:15, I picked up. Mom, the venue just called. The check bounced. What did you do? His voice was panic wrapped in rage. I stopped payment. My tone was calm, almost detached. What do you mean you stopped it? The wedding is in 3 hours. You're ruining everything. In the background, Natalie shrieked. I told you she'd do something like this. She's jealous. Jealous of being used, of being discarded. Samuel's voice dropped, sharp as a knife. Fix this right now, or you're not welcome at the wedding. Do you hear me? You won't be welcome. I fastened the clasp of my pearl necklace, George's gift on our 20th anniversary. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me. Wrinkles, tired eyes, but a dignity that had been buried too long. Then I guess I'm not welcome, I answered and hung up first. The silence afterward was thunderous. For the first time in his life, I had told my son no, and he had no reply. Hours later, I sat in my car outside the church, watching guests stream in. Jewels glittered in the sun. Men adjusted their ties. Women smoothed satin gowns. 47 missed calls from Samuel blinked on my phone. 12 from Natalie, numbers I didn't recognize. Vendors, caterers, desperate voices. I slipped the phone into my purse. The navy dress fit perfectly as I stepped onto the pavement. My heels clicked against the stone walkway. Each step was deliberate, a march toward confrontation I had avoided for too long. Samuel intercepted me at the door, his handsome face twisted in anger. He looked like George for a split second, and that nearly broke me, but his words reminded me this was not George's son anymore. This was a stranger wearing my boy's face. How dare you embarrass me like this? Embarrass you? My voice stayed low, even. You've been embarrassed of me for years. Natalie appeared, radiant in lace, but trembling with fury. This is what poor people do. They ruin things for everyone else because they're jealous. Poor, jealous. Words like stones thrown at the very foundation of who I was. I paid for your entire wedding, I said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Every single penny. Samuel's mask cracked. It's family money. I'm entitled to it. I'm your son. Yes, I replied sadly. You are my son, which is why I gave you everything. But it was never enough, was it? Gasps swelled among the guests. Phones lifted, red dots glowing. My humiliation was now public spectacle, but I didn't flinch. If you love me, you'd want me happy. Samuel tried again, switching to manipulation. I do want you happy, but not at the cost of my dignity. Natalie's bouquet trembled in her hand. Think about our children. Do you want them to know their grandmother ruined our wedding? No, I said softly. I want them to know their grandmother finally stood up for herself. For a fleeting second, Samuel's face crumpled, the little boy surfacing beneath the man. Mom, please. I wanted to fit in with her world. I was ashamed of where I came from. His honesty struck like a blow, but it was too late. Then you were ashamed of me, and that's something I can't fix with a check. The guests leaned forward, sensing the final fracture. Natalie snapped to a groomsman. Call security. I stepped back, chin high. That won't be necessary. I'm leaving. But Samuel grabbed my arm. His voice was cold, threatening. Fix this now, or you'll never see your grandchildren. You'll die alone in that pathetic laundromat. The words were meant to crush me. Instead, they freed me. If that's the kind of father you'll be, using children as weapons, then perhaps it's for the best. Security hovered, unsure. I walked away on my own, dignity intact. Behind me, Eleanor Wilson's voice carried through the air, sharp as glass. Thank God the trash took itself out. Trash. 30 years of service, of sacrifice, and that was what I was to them. But as I slid into my car, tears burning hot, I realized something else. Trash can be taken out, yes, but it also leaves a house cleaner. From the church window, I could see Natalie gesturing wildly, Samuel pacing like a caged animal, guests murmuring, recording. The fairy tale was crumbling, and I had pulled the first card. When I finally turned the key in the ignition, my chest felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. Back home, the house didn't feel empty. It felt mine. The kitchen walls covered in Samuel's pictures no longer mocked me. They reminded me of what I had survived. And then came the knock. Olivia stood on my porch, grocery bags in hand, determination in her young eyes. "I brought dinner," she said simply, "and chocolate, and tissues." I didn't think I needed them, but I let her in, the scent of roasted chicken filling my quiet kitchen. As we cooked together, she chatted about school and friends, deliberately avoiding mention of the wedding. Finally, though, she asked the question I had been dreading. "What happens now, Aunt Francis?" I set down the spoon, meeting her gaze. "I don't know. I've never been Francis first. Always Samuel's mother first, everything else second. Maybe it's time to change that." Her smile was soft but sure. "From the mouths of babes," she teased. That night, after she left, I opened my laptop again. No more withdrawals, no more Draina accounts. Instead, I looked at my future with new eyes. Classes I might take, places I might go, dreams I had set aside for decades. For the first time, the question wasn't what Samuel needed. It was what I wanted. And the answer began with a single word: no. The morning after Olivia left, I thought the worst was behind me. I had walked away from that church with my dignity intact. But sometimes the real battle doesn't happen in public. It arrives in envelopes and phone calls, crafted to break you down quietly. A week later, a registered letter slid through my mail slot. Thick, official, stamped with the name of a law firm I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I tore it open. The words bled into me. "You are legally obligated to honor your commitment. Failure to remit funds may result in legal action." It was signed by Samuel and Natalie's attorney. I sank into my kitchen chair, letter trembling between my fingers. My knees felt weak, as though the weight of decades pressed down all at once. After everything, after the sacrifices, after the humiliation, they wanted more. They wanted to strip away what little remained of me. The walls seemed to close in. For a moment, I believed them. Maybe I had to pay. Maybe I was the problem. The woman who had loved too much, given too freely, and was now being punished for daring to stop. I pressed the letter flat on the table, next to a photograph of George. His smile in that picture was steady, grounding. I whispered into the silence, "What would you do if you were here?" The answer came not from memory, but from instinct. "You tell me to fight." So I called Patricia Winters. Her voice was calm, clipped with certainty. "Francis, breathe. Did you sign anything? Any contracts?" "No, just verbal promises. Checks, that's all." "Then they have no case. And I'll tell you something else. Pressuring an elderly parent for money like this, it edges close to financial elder abuse. I'll draft a cease and desist letter immediately." Relief hit me so hard I nearly wept. "So they can't force me?" "Not a chance," Patricia said firmly. "You gave out of love, not obligation. That makes a world of legal difference." When I hung up, I clutched the phone to my chest. For the first time since George died, I didn't feel alone in the fight. Someone believed me. Someone stood beside me. But doubt still crept in during the nights. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying Samuel's threats. "You'll die alone in that pathetic laundromat." His voice was a poison I couldn't scrub away. During the day, I tried to push forward. I signed up for a painting class at the community center. At first, my brushstrokes were shaky, uncertain. Colors bled together in clumsy shapes. But the joy wasn't in perfection. It was in holding something that was mine alone. A canvas that didn't belong to Samuel or Natalie. A canvas that didn't bleed me dry. Still, whispers of shame followed me. At the grocery store, Mrs. Chen clasped my arm. "You must be so proud. Your boy married at last." I smiled, hollow. I didn't tell her I hadn't been welcome at the reception, that I'd been shoved out of my son's fairy tale like a stain on fine linen. I let her believe in a story that no longer existed. At home, I avoided social media, but curiosity won. Pictures of the wedding flooded my feed. Natalie glowing, Samuel beaming beside her. Guests raising glasses of champagne. The caption, "A perfect day." Perfect. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. My absence wasn't visible. My silence wasn't posted. The world thought they had lived happily ever after, and I was the invisible cost. That night, I broke. I sank to the floor of my living room. The letter from their lawyer crumpled in my fist. For the first time, I admitted the truth. I wasn't just mourning my son. I was mourning the life I thought I had built. The decades of sacrifice felt wasted, poured into a well that only led to emptiness. Tears came hot, unstoppable. I sobbed until my chest ached, until my body curled into itself like a child's. For a moment, I wanted to disappear, to give in, write the check, end the fight, anything to make the noise stop. But then I heard Olivia's voice again in my head. Why do you let them treat you this way? Why indeed? I rose slowly, wiping my face, forcing myself to breathe. I unfolded the crumpled letter and smoothed it against the table. It was still a threat, but it no longer felt like a death sentence. Patricia was right. They had no case. The next morning, Patricia's cease and desist went out. She copied me on the letter. The language was sharp, professional, undeniable. Any further attempts to coerce funds will be considered harassment and elder abuse. For days, silence followed. No calls, no knocks, no threats. Then a whisper of news. Sarah, my niece, called. Natalie's parents had to cover the costs after you cancelled. They are furious, but they couldn't admit it publicly. Too much pride. So the wedding happened. The pictures looked polished. But beneath the surface, cracks widened. I could see it in the stiff smiles, the forced captions. Their fairy tale had a hollow center. And I, the woman they had called trash, was no longer financing their kingdom. Still, the wounds lingered. I found myself staring at Samuel's childhood photos, searching for signs I'd missed. The boy in those frames looked so proud of me, so sure of my love. When had pride turned to shame? When had love turned to leverage? Weeks turned into months. My brushstrokes grew bolder. I painted rivers and skies, faces and flowers. I walked through the park without checking my phone. Maria, my laundromat manager, told me, "It's about time you took care of yourself." But even as life softened, a shadow remained. The letter had shaken me. Samuel's words had scarred me. And at night, alone in my bed, I still heard the echo. "You'll die alone in that pathetic laundromat." I feared he might be right. Until one evening, Olivia showed up again, her arms full of textbooks and her heart wide open. She plopped down at my kitchen table, her young face flushed with energy. "Tell me about your day, Aunt Francis. Show me what you painted." I brought out the canvas, embarrassed. "It's nothing." She studied it seriously. "It's yours. That's something." Her words lodged deep, a seed against the poison. Maybe Samuel's world had rejected me. Maybe his voice still haunted me. But here was Olivia, reminding me that love could exist without conditions, without price tags. The next morning, I rose before dawn, made myself coffee, and carried it to the balcony. The sky turned pink and gold, the river below catching the light. For the first time in months, I didn't feel afraid. But as the sun rose higher, my phone buzzed. A new message, Samuel's name on the screen. Just one line. "We're not done with you yet." My breath caught. Fear slid icy down my spine. They weren't finished. And I wasn't sure how much more I had left to fight. The message blinked on my phone. "We're not done with you yet." I sat frozen, the mug of coffee cooling in my hands. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend I hadn't seen it. But another part, the part that had survived decades of sacrifice, straightened its spine. If they wanted a war, I would not fight it with silence this time. I forwarded the text to Patricia. Within minutes, she called. "Francis, this is intimidation. I'll add it to the file. If they push, we push harder." Her calmness steadied me. For years, I had been on the defensive, always explaining, always excusing. But with Patricia's voice in my ear, I realized something. I had leverage too. I wasn't the helpless widow they believed me to be. That same week, Patricia helped me file a complaint with the state's Elder Abuse Division. It wasn't about pressing charges. It was about drawing a line in ink. Their threats were documented now. Their attempts to coerce money under scrutiny. And then came the crack that shifted everything. Olivia visited one afternoon, arms full of homework. "Aunt Frances," she said carefully, "I overheard something at Sarah's. Natalie told her cousin that not all the money went to the wedding. Some of it was supposed to be a down payment on a house in her parents' neighborhood." I gripped the edge of the table. "What?" Olivia nodded, her face solemn. "They bragged about it. Said they'd used you as their bank, and once the house was theirs, they wouldn't have to deal with you anymore." The words carved through me, sharper than any lawyer's letter. It wasn't just entitlement. It was theft, dressed up as tradition. My sacrifices had been turned into currency for their ambition. That night, I opened my files. Receipts, bank statements, every check I'd written. I spread them across my kitchen table, like evidence in a trial. Nearly $300,000 in 3 years. Engagement parties, vacations, dresses, deposits. My love, documented in numbers, drained into their fantasy. Patricia came the next morning. She scanned the papers, her jaw tightening. "This is more than bad behavior. This borders on fraud. If they misrepresented the purpose of these funds, we could make a case." "For what?" I asked quietly. "For restitution, for elder abuse, for coercion. Francis, you don't have to take this lying down." Restitution. The word tasted foreign. For so long, I had accepted loss as my destiny. But as Patricia spoke, I felt something rise inside me, a fire I hadn't known in years. "Let's do it," I whispered. The weeks that followed moved fast. Patricia drafted letters, gathered evidence, contacted the state. Every time I hesitated, she reminded me, "You're not just protecting yourself. You're setting precedent. You're telling them, and anyone like them, that mothers are not bottomless wells to drain dry." Meanwhile, the Wilsons scrambled. Word trickled through the community. The wedding fiasco had cost them dearly. They'd covered the bills to save face, but the shame lingered. I heard whispers at the laundromat. Customers murmuring about how the wealthy Wilsons had nearly been exposed by their own greed. Then, one evening, the phone rang. Eleanor Wilson's voice crackled through the line. "Francis, we need to talk." I almost hung up, but something in her tone stopped me. "They were going to use your money for a house," she admitted. "We knew, we pushed them, and now it's all unraveling. Natalie blames me, Samuel blames you. But the truth is, we raised her to believe people were tools. I'm sorry." Her words should have felt like vindication. Instead, they left me hollow. "Sorry doesn't return 30 years of savings, Eleanor. Sorry doesn't give me back my son." "I know," her voice broke. "But I thought you should hear it from me before it comes out in court." The line went dead, and I stood in my quiet kitchen, the truth echoing louder than any apology. A month later, we sat across from each other in a mediation room. Samuel on one side, Natalie on the other, lawyers flanking them like guards. I wore my navy dress again, not as a mother this time, but as a woman reclaiming her place. Natalie's eyes were cold, but her hands fidgeted with her necklace. Samuel looked older, wearier, but still defensive. Patricia laid the evidence on the table. Mrs. Morgan gave nearly $300,000 under the belief it was for wedding expenses. Evidence suggests substantial portions were diverted elsewhere. That constitutes misrepresentation and potential elder exploitation. Natalie snapped. "We never signed anything. She gave willingly." Patricia's gaze didn't waver. "Willingly? Yes, but under false pretenses. And when she stopped, you threatened her with letters and texts. That is harassment. That is abuse." Samuel shifted in his seat, his eyes darting to me. "Mom, you don't have to do this. We are family." "Family?" My voice cracked like ice. "Family doesn't bleed each other dry. Family doesn't hide their mother in the back corner and call her poor. Family doesn't threaten to erase her from her grandchildren's lives." Silence filled the room. For the first time, Samuel had no words. Natalie leaned forward, her composure fraying. If you take this public, you'll ruin us. My father's business, Samuel's career. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you treated me like your personal bank, I cut in. The mediator raised a hand. Enough. The law is clear. If this goes to court, the Wilsons and Morgans risk exposure. I suggest settlement. Patricia leaned back, satisfied. The power had shifted. In the end, I didn't demand every penny back. I didn't need to. What I needed was recognition, boundaries, respect written in ink. The agreement was signed. No further financial requests. Acknowledgement of funds misused and restitution through contributions to Olivia's education trust. When the papers slid across the table, I signed with a steady hand. Samuel watched, his eyes hollow. Natalie's lips were pressed so tight they turned white. As we left the building, Patricia touched my arm. You did it, but I didn't feel triumphant. I felt drained, raw. Victories won in blood always carry scars. That night, I sat on my balcony, the city lights reflecting on the river. The battle had been fought. The truth had been dragged into the light. But the cost, the shattered pieces of motherhood, still lay scattered inside me. Samuel had once clung to me at George's funeral, whispering, "You're all I have left, Mom." Now he sat across from me like a stranger, begging me to protect him from consequences he had created. And I had said no. The quiet pressed in, heavier than ever. I had stood my ground, but the loneliness was sharp, unrelenting. Some battles make you stronger, others leave you hollow. This one did both. As I closed my eyes, I wondered, had I saved myself or lost him forever? The ink on the settlement papers had long dried, yet the weight of years still pressed on my chest. I had won, not in the way movies portray victory with champagne and applause, but in the quiet act of reclaiming my dignity. Samuel and Natalie could no longer reach into my pockets. They could no longer twist my love into obligation. But winning didn't erase the ache. At night, when the house grew still, I would trace Samuel's face in old photographs. The little boy who once wrapped his tiny fingers around mine was gone, replaced by a man who had chosen shame over love, greed over family. I had to accept that both versions were real, and that only one of them could sit across from me now. Still, life moved forward. I signed up for pottery classes. My hands, once raw from bleach and fabric softener, now molding clay into bowls and vases. The first ones collapsed under my trembling fingers, but I laughed instead of wept. Clay can be reshaped. And so I told myself, can I? Olivia became my anchor. She visited with stories of pre-med classes, her laughter filling the corners of my house that had once echoed with silence. When she hugged me, fierce and unshamed, I knew that family wasn't defined by blood alone. It was defined by presence, respect, and love freely given. Months turned into a year. I traveled to places I had only dreamed of. Italy, Spain, the rolling hills George and I once promised to see together. Standing in the Sistine Chapel, staring at Michelangelo's ceiling, I cried not for what I had lost, but for the truth I had finally embraced. Life doesn't end when others reject you. Sometimes it begins there. And then came the letter from Samuel. His handwriting was shaky, apologetic. He admitted to therapy, to recognizing the cruelty he had become. He wrote of George, my grandson, asking about me. He didn't ask for money. He didn't beg for more. He simply wrote, "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll see I'm trying to be better." I held that letter for days before answering. My reply was not warm, but it was not cold either. I set boundaries. No money, no manipulation, no more threats. But I offered coffee. One meeting on neutral ground. We met at a Starbucks, the same place where I first met Natalie years earlier. Life has a strange way of circling back. Samuel looked thinner, older, but his eyes clearer than I remembered. He showed me a picture of George, a laughing boy with bright eyes. For a moment, hope fluttered inside me. We spoke for 2 hours, not of the past, not yet, but of who we were now. Two broken pieces trying to see if they could fit into something new. Trust takes time, I told him. He nodded. For once, he didn't push. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet, but it was possibility. Now, at 75, my condo walls are covered not with shame, but with paintings and pottery of my own making. My days are filled with laughter, with Olivia's visits, with classes and travels I never thought possible. Samuel and I meet sometimes, cautiously, slowly. George runs into my arms when we see each other, his small voice calling me Grandma Francis. That is enough for now. If there is one truth my story has taught me, it is this. Love without respect is not love at all. Sacrifice without boundaries is not noble. It is erasure. The most powerful word I ever spoke was not yes, but no. And from that word, I built a life worth living. The story has come to an end, but it leaves us with so much to think about. What about you? Have you ever faced something similar? Being dismissed, pressured, or forced to choose between family and yourself? Share your story in the comments below. And when you do, tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing the places these stories reach. And if you believe in stories of strength and victory, make sure you hit that subscribe button to Roots and Secrets. Your support gives me the energy to create more videos that touch the heart and remind us all of one simple truth. You always have the right to choose yourself.